Welcome back, everybody, to What a Concept, a show that we have here on the channel where we dive deep into some of our favorite concept records. And today's guest, we have Roy over from the Prog Report. Welcome back to the channel, Roy.
What's up? Yeah, happy to be on. I think it's my first time on video on your channel. Is that right?
Yeah, at
I
least on the
think it
channel
is.
proper, because I've had you on a couple of times with What a Concept. Um, but I think this
No,
is, sorry, Quid Pro
the
Quo.
pro
That's the
quo.
one. I have
Yeah,
too many of these
that
shows.
that that now we do on my channel
We
too.
do on
But
your
yeah, it's a whole
channel.
thing. Yeah.
It's a whole thing. But love chatting with you. Love talking about prog and concept records. And we've got a pretty fun one. What record did you choose for us to talk about today?
Yeah, so you asked me to pick a concept record, and there's like the two big ones always are The Wall and The Lamb, right? Those are
Yeah.
like for me, they're the basically the top two untouchables pretty much of concept records. Maybe not for everybody, but I think for me, maybe most people. Um, then the next maybe two or three, this is in there. So really, Queensrÿche Operation Mindcrime, which is what I went with, and we got right over there,
Yeah.
is my other all-time favorite, right under those two. I think it's just always been one of my favorite albums of all time, despite even the concept issue. I think it's just a masterpiece of an album.
Yeah, I think for me, like I like what this album did historically for music and then the albums that it went on to inspire more so than like I still love the album, but I think it's more of like the historical context of this record for music and what it did for the music moving forward. For me, that's more of like why I love it because I came into this pretty late. Obviously, this was written around the time when I was born, so I wasn't on the ground floor when this was released. But, listening to it after I had already, you know, devoured all of Symphony X and Dream Theater and all these bands that took inspiration from them, I went back and listened to it and really enjoyed it. Like I really, really enjoyed it.
So what year were you first discovering this, you think?
This would have probably been about like mid 2000s, like 2006, 2007. So like
Wow,
I think
that's
I had
wow.
heard about Operation Mindcrime 2 because I think that's when the second one dropped around that time,
Yeah, could be
if I
about right.
think.
Yeah.
And then everybody was talking about how this was like a big seminal album and how like Operation Mindcrime, the first one was so big. And I was able to find a tape of this way back when. So yeah, that's when I was introduced to it.
Yeah, I got
So,
into Queensrÿche, well, not as late as you, but with Operation, not with Empire is what I meant to say,
right.
which was 1990, 91. I'd heard a couple of singles from Mindcrime on MTV, didn't really do
Hmm.
it for me. I don't think I was ready for that kind of thing yet. But when Empire came out, Empire, the title single was amazing, and
Yeah.
then Silent Lucidity just like knocked my socks off because I thought that was the greatest thing ever.
Hmm.
So then I went back, and someone said you should listen to this one, so I did, and man, I was like, wow, how did I miss this record? And
Yeah.
I just became obsessed with it, and then I went back to Rage for Order, and then I went back to The Warning, and those
Hmm.
four albums are just as a collection brilliant masterpieces. After that, Promised Land was sort of still okay, dropped off a
Hmm.
little bit, and then literally after that album, it went off a cliff for about the next 10 records. I've
Yeah.
never seen a band like that ever, where every single album just got precipitously worse
Yeah.
by a lot, but I just kept buying each one, hoping that they would be great, and they just weren't. They just kept getting really bad. The last few with Todd La Torre, side note, have been actually good, and so the band is back to making some good stuff, but it's a little bit of a different band. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
was gonna say, like, I think from what 2015's Human Condition or Condition Human, I
yeah,
feel like since then they've been pretty good.
yeah,
I
the
like
last one
the
especially maybe was the best one.
yeah,
The
like
name
Digital
escapes me right
Noise
now.
Alliance and The
That
Verdict.
was
I
really good, and maybe their best album since Empire,
okay.
I'll say.
I agree in that like after I had, devoured Operation Mindcrime, I went and listened to Empire and Rage for Order and really like that. But then after that it was just like, oh, this is like a Jethro Tull crash and burn after like, undercovers or under wraps.
Probably maybe the band I've seen most or second most
Oh,
in concert in my life.
okay.
Like
Wow.
a lot of times.
So this is a good album to talk about.
Yeah.
Have they performed the whole thing in totality when you've seen them? Because I know when they first
Yes,
dropped
many
this record.
times. Yeah,
Okay.
many times. Yeah. To the point where it almost got old.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
because the first tour I saw them, this falls in line with this, was with the Empire tour. Because when they had Operation Mindcrime, when it came out, it got them some notoriety, but they still
Hmm.
weren't big enough to do a major headlining arena tour around that album. Empire got them to that mark. So when they went and toured Empire in big arenas, 20,000 seater, stuff like that, which imagine that time when they could do that. The opening set for that was them playing about 6 or 7 songs from Empire and a couple from like Rage for Order, and then playing the whole Mindcrime. That was that
Hmm.
tour.
Hmm.
And it was amazing with videos and the whole thing. It was just awesome. It left a major impression at, I
Yeah.
was, I don't know, 16, I want to say. I mean, it was like the greatest concert I've ever seen at that age, and it still holds up pretty good.
Yeah, I could imagine. Like, kind of putting this into context, like this came out in the late 80s when I think like other metal bands at the time were mainly just doing kind of like the thrashy beat or hair or glam metal stuff. Like this
Right.
was, I think outside of like Fate's Warning, I think one of the few progressive side of metal. I can't think of another like metal record of the time that was a concept record that told a story like this. Like I know Iron Maiden had
No.
done a couple quasi concept records, but this was the only one that was really doing a storyline.
Yeah, and the story that you could sort of follow and it made
Yeah.
sense and it was an original take. Really the big ones that had come before had already been a while. The Wall was maybe 9 years earlier, something like that.
Yeah, 8 or 9 years
Um,
before that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a good time, but they really filled an interesting gap musically at that time because that was 88. Are you talking that was the Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, Poison
Yep.
era?
Yep.
And then on the opposite end of that, you had like the super metal bands. Metallica was getting big at that time, and
Yep.
Maiden was really big. That was the other thing. You had those two groups of people that were either wearing Def Leppard on their jean jackets or Metallica and Iron Maiden. Those were like I was a little bit more in the Def Leppard camp at that time.
Sure. Sure.
So this was right down the middle. And Fates Warning, yeah, was the other band like this,
Yeah.
but they hadn't broken through yet. They
That's it.
broke through sort of on the back of this
Yeah.
with Perfect Symmetry, which I want to say, or Parallels, I'm sorry, which came out after. Queensrÿche had that 10% more melodic approach that Fates Warning just was always missing. Very cool
Yeah.
band, great albums, but they never had that commercial thing about them that sort of gave them that little bit more accessibility.
Yeah, I would agree to that. And I feel like the bands that came afterwards that were more progressive metal, like Dream Theater's the obvious one, but also Symphony X and them, I feel like they were using a lot of the template and playing styles. It's like Queensryche and this album, opened the window and opened the door for everybody else to start flashing themselves through. I was listening to this and I was really hearing scenes from memory because of all the sound effects and all the story beats and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, and then you find out
um,
that influenced them, Dream Theater, when they were making this record.
yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing about it, story-wise, was good, but musically, really interesting.
Hmm.
They brought a lot of different guitar stuff in here. The dual guitars, the way they harmonized and played different things with each other was cool. It wasn't just about shredding.
Hmm.
Very kind of intricate melodic stuff going on, very dark, different types of songs.
Hmm.
Um, just really gripping, and they're not a bad song on it. I just thought it was. I still think it is. Listening to it now again for this, because I
Hmm.
haven't listened to it from beginning to end in a while.
Hmm.
Occasionally, a song will come on shuffle or something, and it's like, oh yeah, this is great. But from
Yeah.
beginning to end, it's pretty stellar.
So I know you've kind of danced around the concept. Do you want to take a stab at summarizing the story? And
I cheated. I wrote. So
oh,
I got some help
okay.
from Chat GPT on the
Oh
summary there a
man,
little
don't
bit.
use AI. Come on, man. It's taking our germs.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's without reading sort of the specific details of it. It's basically sort of a story about a guy trying to start a revolution,
Mhm.
and against what's going on politically and that kind of thing. This Dr. X character, who's the evil mastermind, takes control over this character Nikki, who we hear from the beginning, um, and gets him to do his sort of bidding, committing assassinations and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then that guy falls in love with Sister Mary, who once was involved in the revolution thing, but now she's a nun who's trying to break away from it. Dr. X has Nikki kill her, which then causes him to be disillusioned and question the whole thing, and then he goes crazy, and ends up, I guess, in a mental institution. It's sort of my
Yeah.
loose story.
I mean, that's a pretty good summarization. Like, I love with concept albums, there's really two stories going on, right? There's the plot and then there's the themes. And I love within this how they kind of go hand in hand a little bit. I like how this one starts and ends with him in the mental institution trying to remember what's going
Yeah,
on, and there is that little bit of when the narrator's not like credible. There's a specific term. What is it? Narrative, unbelievable narrator or something like that. Untrustworthy narrator.
maybe.
The
I'm not sure.
the term is escaping me at the moment.
Yeah,
So it's like, can he really believe his own thoughts based on all of his mind control that he had with Dr. X? I think the deeper meaning that I really appreciate and love about this album is how it really pits the two aspects of like religion and drugs of being the calmers and the opiate of the masses and how both are being taken advantage of from the people in power. So you have religion with Mary and the whole priest aspect of it, and then you have the
right.
drugs that used to be a part of the lead character. It's Nikki,
Nikki.
right? Nikki, yeah. Nikki and this sister Mary with their background, and how both were controlling, but at the end of the day, it's all this Doctor X that's controlling everything.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and really, it's a story that, I mean, not the specifics of the characters and everything, but the like you're talking about the themes and what it's trying to get to. It
yeah,
still holds today very
yeah.
much.
I was listening to it being like, wow, this is even more prominent today than it was back in the
Yeah, I
80s.
mean the first lyrical track, Revolution Calling. I mean, you could write somebody could write that today and put that out.
Yeah,
Funny
here in
story about that
Ontario.
song. Funny story. I mean, I was really obsessed with this album at 15, 16. Um,
Yeah.
but when I had I remember what it was, but I have a vague memory of taking some kind of exam
Hmm.
that some kind of math exam or something like that. I don't remember exactly, um, but not being interested in it or not knowing how to answer any of the questions. I was just like, I don't know anything to do with this.
Yeah.
So I turned it over and I just started writing all the lyrics to Revolution Calling on the back.
Oh
and
boy.
and I'm thinking a kid doing that today would get arrested, probably.
Or at least call down to the principal's office
Yeah,
being like, hey,
like, are
what's
you
this all
okay?
about?
Do you need
Yeah.
like mental,
Yeah.
like psychology or something? But I just liked the song. I mean,
Yeah.
really had no deeper meaning at all.
Yeah.
I just was like into music big time.
And I also love how I think part of the influence of this was, the lead singer, what's his face?
Jeff Tate.
Jeff Tate, spending some time in Montreal in Canada and, getting associated with the separatist movement there and like being a Canadian and learning about that and actually experiencing a little bit of that, being on the Ontario side of things and always hearing about Quebec and their strifes with Canada overall, you can kind of feel that struggle, that identity almost anywhere within a larger context, wherever there's like in groups and groups feeling left out and having that bleed itself throughout this album as well.
Yeah, yeah. I did read a couple of things doing research on this that I guess he was inspired by Reagan era politics. That makes sense, the early
Yeah,
80s. And another interesting note was that it was produced by Peter Collins.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, which I'd forgotten about, but which is a very cool thing for them. And I think he did Empire as well. I think sonically, this record, I wish it sounded a little better. Looking
Sure.
back on it now a little bit, it's a little muddy, I think, the mix.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
It's not terrible, but it could have used it to be a little bit more crispness, I think, in there a little.
So when I listen to this online, usually it's the 2003 remastered version, but my tape and my record, because I also have a record copy of this, it has that 80s muddy, thrashy kind of mixing style that a lot of bands were doing, like Metallica within their first four records. I would agree. I'm not a big fan of that. I like a little bit more dynamic in my mixing, a little bit
Yeah,
more
Empire
range.
sounded way better to me.
Yeah.
That's almost maybe too clean. That
Okay, fair.
somewhere in the middle is where it would
Went a
have been
little too
great.
far.
But I do like the Empire sound quite a bit.
Yeah. I think that actually brings us to our some of the negatives that you had about this, because we already talked a lot about the music. Do you have any negatives about this record? I know this is one of your all-time favorites,
No,
so
I
you might
really
have to
don't. I mean,
scrape the bottom of the
I
barrel.
honestly, the sound is the only thing that sometimes sticks out at me that I wish it was a little cleaner. But no, I mean, it's a weird thing because people that know me and other Prog Report guys, they make fun of me a lot because I really nitpick at um, waste of space in records. It's just a
Yeah.
pet peeve of mine, where like there's a minute of a guy walking down a street or something. Like I don't want any of that because it's only interesting to me one time,
Right.
the first time.
I was gonna
After
say,
that, after that, it's a nuisance to
yeah,
me.
the new Dream Theater record, that first track must drive you insane.
Well, I love the song, but yeah, there's a minute and a half of just the
Yeah.
guy walking down the street. And
Yeah.
listen, they know it's. I am not to say I know better than what Dream Theater makes.
Uh-huh.
If they can make their record and it's all good.
Yeah.
But just personally for me, I like the album, the music so much, and there's only so much time left in the day. I just want to get to it. So
Sure.
that's sort
Sure.
of that's just my thing. This album has a couple of those points, but they don't bother me.
Okay, I
So
was gonna ask. Yeah.
yeah, no, I think I don't know, the opening is sort of cool. I think it's
Sure.
actually this one is more it's like a movie.
It is. Yeah, it's much more
So I
cinematic.
don't feel like it's wasted. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that's unique about it for me. I like every track. I think the
Yeah.
sequencing is great. I wouldn't move any songs around.
Hmm.
The ending has it's the epic ending. I mean, Eyes of a Stranger is amazing. Yeah, no, I think it's perfect.
Okay.
Other than nitpicking a little bit about it sonically.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm kind of in a similar boat. Again, just my own tastes of metal. I like my metal to be a little bit more symphonic, but what they were doing at the time when metal and symphonic were almost diametrically opposed, I can't fault it for that. We had already discussed kind of the production side of things and it being a little flat, a little muddy. Not a big fan, but overall, I think this is the best type of metal music that we got from that time. Not a whole lot of negatives that I can place on this, which leads us to the fun little ending of this video that I like to do, which
Yeah,
is the
I saw that. I don't have that list in front of me, but you
I got
can
it right here.
yeah.
Don't worry. Yeah, so this is the Platinum Concept Album test. I've got
Yeah,
five questions that we'll
interesting.
run
Okay.
through. At the end of the day, you get more sway than I do of if it passes or fail, because that's how we do it. It's not a Likert scale where it's like 1 through 5. It's a pass or a fail. If it gets zero of the five questions, then it's a trash record. 1 out of 5 is a tin. 2 out of 5 is bronze. 3 out of 5 is silver. 4 out of 5 is gold. All five is a platinum record. We have yet to have a platinum record. The
Okay.
competition,
I have there's a bit of a tiny flaw in the ranking, which I'll
please
mention.
do. Please.
Well, no, let's go do it, and then
Okay.
we'll talk about it.
Okay. I love that. Okay. So the first question would be, is the concept of this record original?
God, I haven't heard every concept album ever, but I kind of feel like it is for the music that we listen to. I do.
Hmm.
A lot of the concept albums that have come out over the year have that same story of like music's being oppressed and we're gonna save music and there's a
Yeah.
guy that's gonna save music that's been done a lot. So that's not this. No, I think this is an original
Yeah.
take.
I
I can't
think
think
the
of any.
only concept record that comes close to this style of music, like storyline and kind of themes and whatnot, is oh, what is it? The Styx record with Mr. Roboto. Killjoy or
Kilroy was here.
Kilroy was here. That's it. Kilroy was
But
here.
but isn't that again sort of that music is oppressed
A
thing
little bit, a little bit. It's a little
story?
bit more political, I think, but I think within this one where it's a little bit more of like religion and drugs are the opiate of the masses and we can control that, we can control the population kind of an idea. Whereas I think Kilroy was much more of a technology is what's going to
Yeah.
do it. So,
But that had like he was the savior that they try to
mhm,
spin. Interesting on this one too is the main character is a villain who
yeah,
loses. That
that's
it
it.
ends with him. It ends
It
with
ends
him
with him
losing,
losing.
not being redeemed, which
Yeah.
is, not
That's
always the
fairly
case.
original. I don't think I've encountered a concept record where the point of view character isn't at least somewhat victorious instead of just
Yeah,
ending. I could give this one a pass.
yeah,
So that will
definitely.
be 1 for 1.
Okay.
It is not a trash record. The second question goes to: does the music reinforce the themes of this concept?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. The 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 aggressiveness of some of the drum tracks, the guitar work in songs like Speak, and then you have that kind of crowd cheering and the sound effects that play along to it. Like got marching and
Hmm.
revolution things going on. Mission where he's watching TV and shooting the gun at it and getting inspired and yeah, I think all of that plays into it, makes you feel like you're right in the
Yeah.
story.
And
So
I would
for
agree. I
sure.
would even say like Revolution Calling is like a call to action with that
Right.
kind of drive that you can see the crowd around you like really coming together. So,
Oh, and the
yeah,
opening too. Like, do you feel
absolutely.
like it's the beginning of that's the opening sequence and there's like marching and
Hmm.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's another pretty easy pass. That's 2 for 2. This is where it starts to get a little bit trickier, especially for concept records. The third question is it accessible to the casual listener? Can somebody off the street sit down and listen to it? And
Well,
at least,
that's my issue with with these
okay, let's
questions
get into it. Let's get into it.
because in the world of this kind of music, this I think would be, I guess platinum would be the top.
Hmm.
Um, but it can never be accessible. It's just not by nature of what it is. It's not going to be a hits sort of record. You know what I'm saying?
I
It's
understand what you're
always
saying,
going
and
to
I
be a
get
little
that.
harder for somebody off the street to get into because it's not just songs. It's a story. It's a thing. I think
Yeah,
that makes it challenging.
I agree, but that's part of the reason why I put this on here because if you're able to make it accessible, that's what really elevates it to that next level. I'm thinking of there's 2 records that always, well, 3 now, that really come to my mind that would be able to pass this, and it would be like Tommy from The Who, which has very accessible rock music that I feel like anybody could sit down and listen to. Even some of those like instrumental moments on that record.
Sure.
Green Day's American Idiot is another one where it really broke through. Even somebody that's not a big fan of the pop punk can sit down and listen to
Yeah.
those tracks,
That got me listening to Green Day, and I was
right?
not a fan before. So that's
I would even
interesting.
say like a album like Dark Side of the Moon would be another example where it's a concept record and
I
it
think the
gets
most
it.
interesting one is The Wall
Yeah,
because overall I would say it's not accessible on the whole, but
yeah,
4 of the songs are the biggest hits of rock music maybe ever. They draw you in, right? Those are legit hits. I mean, Another Brick in the Wall, Hey You, Comfortably Numb,
yep.
Young
Mama
Lust,
is another one that
Young
I think
Lust, and
of.
Mother. I mean, you're
Yeah,
talking major rock hits.
yeah. Run Like
So
Hell, another big one.
Run Like Hell, forgot
Yep,
about that one.
yeah.
So I don't know what's more accessible than that.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know.
exactly. So that's where it transcends from just a great album to like a masterpiece. Now,
Yeah, I guess I don't. I would say yeah. This is not accessible by what we're talking about. So no, you'd have to say no.
yeah.
But I don't think I don't think an album like this being accessible should take away from it being like a masterpiece.
Yeah, and
That's
I
my
I
opinion on it.
fully agree, but I didn't want people to come on here and every single album getting the 5 out of 5 treatment. I had to put some kind of a guardrail in place to see like, okay, is
Fair enough.
this like the pantheon that everybody talks about, or are these the hidden gems that we introduce people to later on?
Well, hey, your
Yeah.
list. It's all good.
So that's the one where I think a lot of these albums do trip over, so that one
Yeah,
will get a fail.
right.
But I think the last 2 questions this will pass pretty easily. The fourth question is the music solid from start to finish? Do we have any dips and qualities or any duds in the track list?
Yeah, really no. I guess I think we talked about it. I don't think there's a boring, dull moment on this
Yeah.
record. Even the sort of talking interludes in the beginning and the end are cool.
Yeah.
Um, the Waiting for 22, that guitar sort of instrumental is awesome
Yeah.
and sort of calms you down right before the big ending. No, I have no issues at all at any point.
Yeah, I could see them being tempted to put this into a double record because a lot of those like storyline records are a double disc, like Tommy, The Wall. And I'm glad that this is just a single disc because it's the perfect amount of time with this record. It's completely solid from start to finish. So yeah,
Yeah.
for me, it's gets another very easy pass. I already kind of talked about this last one. The final question is the album the perfect length? Is it too long or too short?
Yeah, I think what is the length on it? I'm not sure. I didn't write
I
that
think
down.
it's just over like 40
An
minutes
hour
or something
maybe?
like that. It's like,
Is it that little?
yeah, it's fairly tight.
Yeah. No, then great. I don't
Yeah. I know the
again,
expanded version is
I think
1 hour
that
and eight
goes
minutes, but
I think it goes towards the is there any boring moments or is there any kind of wasted space? There isn't.
yeah,
So it's concise. It's exactly what it needs to be.
yeah,
Doesn't overstay its welcome. I think yeah, great. No
yeah.
issues there either.
I agree. That's another very easy pass. So that is 4 out of 5, which puts this as a gold-plated record. I think that's pretty good for this record.
Yeah, right on. Awesome.
Um, Amazing. So thank you, Roy, for coming on and chatting about one of the big masterpieces from the 80s.
Yeah,
Anything
thanks for
you
having me.
want
It's
to
always fun.
leave the listener with, leave the watcher with?
I would say if you like this record, or if you haven't heard this record, if you like this record, or you go back and listen to it, and then you realize it's amazing, and then you say to yourself, "Well, I should check out Operation Mindcrime 2." I would say don't.
Yeah, I agree. It's not their worst record, but as we already discussed, their worst is fairly bad. It's
Although I remember at the time thinking, okay, it's better than the last 4 or 5 albums or whatever the number
yeah,
was at that point, which is still probably true. Like you're
yeah,
saying, it's not their worst. There's a few interesting moments, but it just doesn't. That's an album that it was like they tried to remake this, but made it confusing. It
yeah,
does have wasted moments. It does have songs you want to skip, and it has no story that makes any sense.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
all
complete
all
opposite.
that tightness of this record was unfurled, and now it's just it's a little bit of a mess for
It's
sure.
one of those issues where it's like, okay, guys, we need. It's been a while. The last few records have bombed.
Yeah,
Let's try this and see if it sticks, and it didn't.
yeah. Oh boy. Well,
I
that's
love Queensrÿche. I do. Believe me, one of my
yeah,
all-time favorite bands, and the first 5 records plus the EP are all-time favorites.
yeah.
So to me, that's still good enough.
I agree. And the music that they're putting out today is still pretty solid. Like I would go back and listen to the last 3 records that they've put out.
Yeah, I saw them recently a couple of times. I think at a club nearby, and also on Cruise to the Edge. They played, I think it was last year, with Todd singing, and they are doing like they were doing the Origins tour or something like that, where they were playing stuff from like The Warning and Rage for Order and all this older stuff, and it's amazing, and they sound awesome, and it's a
Mm.
blast to hear the songs again live, the different songs, because again, right before Jeff Tate left the band. They were in a lull where the new records weren't hitting, so they were just playing Mindcrime pretty much like from beginning to end all the time. Which
Right.
again, I loved, but it got old. It was like, okay, do something else. Now Todd being in the band, who's a magnificent singer, he's amazing,
Yeah.
has allowed him to go back and do some of this other stuff, which has been fun. So I would still go see them today. I think they're great.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Roy, for coming on.
Thank you, thank you. It's
Chatting
fun.
about Queensryche. I've left the Prog Report all down there, so if anybody hasn't already subscribed to them, please do. Um,
Did you
and
see our
yeah,
Wheel of Metal yet?
I haven't. I'm saving that for one of my rainy days because I love the Wheel of Prague and the Wheel of Metal. I just need like a good hour and a half of time to dedicate
Yeah,
to them.
Yes, if
So
anybody hasn't seen, if I could give a shout to our Wheel of Prog episodes and most recently the one episode offshoot that we did, Wheel of Metal, which is sort of our game show ranking show that we do, and it's bonkers and things go
I love
insane.
it. It's one of my favorite
The Wheel of
things.
Metal is really nuts. You got to see it. It's you wouldn't believe some of the rankings on this thing. It's a trip.
Amazing. Yeah, I've
But
left all
we'll have
those.
to have you on one of those again.
I would
And
love to be on there.
I'm also starting to think of another Quid Pro Quo that we got to do, so we'll have to get
Oh,
that on.
great. Yeah, I've got a handful of albums in my back pocket to introduce you to, so that'll be
Awesome.
fun.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you again, and thanks everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.